It was one of those quiet Saturday mornings, the kind where the house feels too still, like it's waiting for something to happen. I was sipping my coffee in the kitchen, scrolling through emails, when I heard soft footsteps behind me. I turned around and there she was, my 8-year-old stepdaughter Ava, standing in the doorway in her oversized pajamas and her mom's heels, trying to balance like a little fawn learning to walk. She looked proud, almost regal, like she had a secret to share. And then she tilted her head, gave me a shy smile and asked, "Do I smell grown up yet?" The scent hit me before I could even answer. It was unmistakable, her mom's perfume. The one she wears on special occasions. The same one she wore on our wedding day. It lingered in the air like a memory brought to life. There was something so innocent yet striking about the way Ava asked that question. It wasn't just about the perfume. It was about something deeper. A little girl trying to make sense of what it means to grow up, to belong, to feel noticed. I smiled at her, trying to keep it light, but my chest felt tight. "You smell very fancy," I said. She giggled and did a little spin, nearly toppling over in those heels. But behind her laughter I saw something in her eyes. A kind of hope, maybe even longing. She's been through so much for someone so young. Losing her dad, getting used to a new home, a new parent. Me. When I married her mom, I knew I'd be stepping into something big, something delicate. Becoming a stepdad isn't like flipping a switch. It's a process, a slow weaving of trust and love and patience. And Ava, with all her questions and wide eyes, is right at the center of it. That moment in the kitchen, though it lasted barely a minute, felt like a turning point. But what she said next is what really stopped me cold. Just as I was reaching for my coffee again, she looked up at me and whispered, "Mom used to let me wear this perfume when she missed Dad. Do you think she misses him today?" I didn't know what to say. The weight of that question settled into the room like a thick fog. I looked at her. This little girl trying so hard to understand grown-up emotions, trying to connect the dots between scent and memory and love and loss. And I realized she wasn't just playing dress-up. She was trying to feel close to something or someone she couldn't quite reach. But what happened after that? Well, let's just say it changed the way I saw everything. Not just her. Not just her mom. But my own place in this family. And it all started with a bottle of perfume and one simple, unexpected question. I knelt down so I could be eye level with her, trying to find the right words. But my mind was spinning. I hadn't expected her to bring up her dad. Especially not like that, wrapped inside a question about perfume. I looked at Ava, standing there so still, waiting for an answer. Her big brown eyes, full of curiosity and something else, something heavier, were locked on mine. "I think sometimes your mom remembers a lot of things all at once," I said carefully. "And maybe that smell brings some of them back." It wasn't a full answer and I knew it. But what could I say? I wasn't sure myself how often my wife thought about her late husband. We didn't talk about him much. Not because of discomfort, but maybe because it was just easier that way. Simpler. Ava nodded like she understood, but I could tell she was still thinking hard. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes and then whispered, "She cried last night." I heard her. The words hit like a quiet blow. She said it so matter-of-factly, not accusing, not sad, just honest. I didn't know what to say to that either. I had heard her too, if I'm honest. I pretended to be asleep. I didn't want to intrude on something that felt private. Grief has a way of making space feel smaller, and bigger, and colder. And sometimes it makes even love feel confusing. Ava suddenly turned and walked toward the living room, the click-clack of her mom's heels following her like a tiny echo of the past. I stayed there in the kitchen for a moment, holding on to my coffee like it might give me answers. I realized I didn't really know what was going on inside either of their hearts. I was part of this family, but some corners still felt locked. Like I was invited into the house, but not all the rooms. I followed her into the living room. She was now on the couch, flipping through an old photo album I hadn't seen before. Her little fingers traced over a picture I recognized instantly. Her parents on a beach, smiling, the sun setting behind them. Her mom looked younger, softer in a way, full of light. It was a side of her I hadn't seen with my own eyes, only through stories and quiet glances at old pictures like this one. "Why don't we have pictures like this?" Ava asked, not looking up. Her voice wasn't angry, just curious, maybe a little wistful. I sat beside her, unsure if I should reach for her hand or give her space. "We've got different ones." I said quietly. But maybe it's time we start making more. She closed the album slowly, carefully. I think Mom still misses him, she said again, more like a statement this time. Even if she loves you. And there it was, the invisible line I had felt since the beginning but never named. That quiet space between being someone new and replacing someone who never really left. The room fell silent again. The perfume still hung faintly in the air. And I began to wonder if I was finally being pulled into a story that had started long before I arrived. One that I still didn't fully understand. Later that afternoon, the house felt heavier, like it was carrying a conversation none of us knew how to finish. My wife, Jenna, came downstairs with her hair still damp from the shower. She smiled when she saw Ava curled up with the photo album, but her smile faded just a little when she noticed which page it was open to. She didn't say anything at first. Just walked over, sat next to her daughter, and gently pulled her close. I stayed back watching the two of them, unsure if I belonged in that moment or not. Sometimes being a step-parent means learning how to be present without taking up too much space. I'd gotten used to that. But lately moments like these had been getting harder to watch without wondering if there would always be this invisible line between them and me. Were you looking at old memories? Jenna asked Ava softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Ava nodded. I wore your perfume. Jenna didn't respond right away. She reached out, ran her fingers along the edge of the album, then glanced at me. Her eyes said something I couldn't quite read, maybe regret, maybe surprise. Then she kissed the top of Ava's head and whispered, that perfume always made me feel strong, even when I wasn't. That sentence sat between us like a quiet truth. I could feel something shift, but I didn't know what it meant yet. Later that night, after Ava went to bed, I found Jenna in the laundry room, sitting on the clothes dryer staring at nothing. I leaned against the doorframe and asked, you okay? She looked up a little startled. Yeah, just tired. I walked in slowly. Ava said she heard you crying last night. Jenna closed her eyes and exhaled. I didn't mean for her to. We stood there in silence for a minute before she added, I didn't expect her to remember that perfume. I haven't worn it in years. It was his favorite. There it was, his name, even if it wasn't said out loud. Her late husband. Ava's dad. The shadow in every room that we pretend isn't there. I know I'm not him, I said gently, stepping closer. But I want to understand. I want to help, not feel like an outsider in my own family. Jenna looked at me then, eyes glossy. You're not an outsider. But I can't erase the life I had before. And sometimes I don't know how to fit both of you in the same space. That confession didn't sting the way I thought it might. It just made everything feel more real. More complicated. Meanwhile, upstairs, Ava was wide awake, listening. The hallway light had cast just enough glow into her room for her to see the photo she kept hidden under her pillow, one of her and her dad at the park. She held it in one hand and clutched the sleeve of her mom's old sweater in the other. In her young heart, two worlds were trying to exist at the same time. And none of us really knew which one she felt more at home in. The next morning, the air in the house felt different, charged. Like something was waiting to surface. We went through the motions as usual. Breakfast, dishes, Ava getting ready for school. But underneath it all, there was something unspoken between us. Jenna barely touched her coffee. Ava was unusually quiet, pushing cereal around in her bowl. Her mom's perfume still faint on her skin from the day before. After Ava left for school, Jenna stood by the window, watching the street long after the bus disappeared. I walked up beside her, but she didn't move. She's pulling away, she said quietly. I frowned. From you. Jenna shook her head. From everything. She doesn't know where to put her feelings, and I haven't been helping. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to fix it, to tell her everything was going to be okay. But another part knew that sometimes silence says more than any promise could. That night we all had dinner together, but it felt like we were acting. Ava barely spoke. Jenna tried asking about school, her art project, the upcoming music show. But Ava just nodded or gave one-word answers. I could tell Jenna was trying not to take it personally, but the weight of it all was starting to crack the surface. After dinner, Ava disappeared into her room without saying goodnight. Jenna started cleaning up, but she wasn't really present. I offered to finish up, and she gave me a grateful look before heading upstairs. I was wiping down the counter when I heard it, Soft voices, then a sudden sharp tone from Ava. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught the words Dad. Not the same. And you never talk about him anymore. My heart stopped. I walked up the stairs slowly. Not sure if I should be hearing this, but I couldn't turn away either. I stood outside Ava's room where the door was slightly cracked. Jenna sat on the edge of the bed, her face pale, her hands clenched. You always say we're a family now, Ava said, voice trembling. But sometimes it feels like you want me to forget he ever existed. Jenna's voice was low. That's not true. I could never forget him. And I never want you to forget him either. Then why don't we ever talk about him? Ava asked, tears welling up in her eyes. Why don't we have pictures of him in the living room anymore? Jenna looked stunned. I didn't want to make things harder for you or for us. I thought maybe putting it away would help us all move forward. But I don't want to move on if it means pretending he was never here, Ava said. I felt something twist inside me. I suddenly understood what this moment was. This wasn't just about loss. It was about space. About making room for the past, while still building a future. Just then, Ava turned her head slightly and saw me standing in the hallway. Her eyes met mine. There was no anger in them, just a silent question. Where do you fit in all this? And I didn't have the answer. Not yet. Ava didn't say anything. She just looked at me for a long second, really looked. Then she turned back toward her mom and buried her face in the blanket. Jenna didn't move either. The whole room felt frozen. Like if any of us spoke, something fragile would crack wide open. I stepped back quietly, giving them space, and walked down the hall toward our bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed replaying everything. Ava's words, Jenna's face, the weight in that little girl's voice. She wasn't just mourning her dad. She was mourning the parts of her life that had been quietly packed away. Pictures, stories, even smells like that perfume. Things that tied her to a past no one wanted to erase, but no one really knew how to hold on to either. That night, long after everyone went to bed, I couldn't sleep. I got up and went downstairs, drawn by something I couldn't name. I ended up in the garage digging through boxes. I remembered seeing something months ago. An old box labeled photos in Jenna's handwriting. After some searching, I found it. Inside were dozens of pictures. Ava as a toddler. Her dad pushing her on a swing, family birthdays, holidays. So many memories sealed in a cardboard box. I picked up one photo. Ava and her dad sitting under a tree, both grinning wide, faces smudged with ice cream. As I held it in my hands, I heard movement behind me. I turned, and there was Jenna standing in the doorway barefoot, wearing one of my old hoodies. She looked surprised to see me, then her eyes dropped to the photo in my hands. She stepped closer slowly. I didn't know you kept these, I said softly. I didn't want to throw them out, she replied. But I didn't know how to leave them out either. I looked at her, searching her expression. Ava's asking for more than just memories. She's asking for a piece of her identity. Jenna nodded, her eyes beginning to well up. I thought I was protecting her by keeping the past tucked away. But maybe I've been hiding from it too. Before I could respond, her phone buzzed on the shelf by the door. She glanced at it and froze. I noticed her reaction instantly. She picked it up, stared at the screen, and then slowly handed it to me. It was a message. From her late husband's sister. Ava's aunt. Someone I didn't even know Jenna still talked to. The message was short. I need to talk to you. It's about Ava. It's important. I looked at Jenna. What is this? She swallowed hard. I haven't told you everything. The air in the garage tightened, like the walls themselves were listening. I could see something shifting in Jenna's face. Hesitation, maybe fear. There's something I didn't know when we got married, she said, voice barely above a whisper. And if what her aunt says is true, it could change everything. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Jenna met my eyes, and what she said next made my heart stop. She thinks Ava's dad might not be who we thought he was. I stared at Jenna, trying to process what she just said. The words echoed in my head. Asterisk, Ava's dad might not be who we thought he was. Asterisk, I felt the floor shift beneath me, not literally, but in the kind of way where everything you thought was true suddenly feels fragile. Jenna sat down on an old storage bin and ran her hands through her hair. After he died, I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to. We were grieving and things were chaotic. But Ava's Aunt Lauren, She called tonight and said something's been weighing on her for years. She said she recently found letters. Ones he wrote but never sent. I leaned in. Letters? Jenna nodded. To another woman. One of them mentioned a child. A boy. But Lauren thinks it might have been a mistake, that the child might actually be Ava. I blinked confused. You mean? She thinks he wasn't Ava's biological father? Jenna hesitated, then nodded. She said the timelines don't match. That he always had doubts but never said anything. He raised Ava like his own and I never questioned it. But Lauren says he may have known the truth. My heart pounded. The conflict we'd all been dancing around. Ava's grief, Jenna's silence, my place in their lives. It suddenly had a deeper layer. It wasn't just about losing someone. It was about identity. About truth. We sat in silence, the garage suddenly colder than it had been minutes before. The next morning Jenna called Lauren. They spoke for over an hour, and I stayed in the living room with Ava, pretending to help with her school project. But my mind was elsewhere. When Jenna finally came down, she looked pale but steadier. She's sending the letters, she told me. And she wants to talk to Ava. But only if we're okay with it. I nodded, but inside everything felt raw. What do we tell her? That evening we sat down with Ava. We didn't say everything. Just enough. Jenna told her that sometimes people leave behind stories we didn't know. And that those stories can make us ask big questions. Ava listened quietly, clinging to the old photo under her pillow. When Jenna finally said, "Your aunt thinks your dad might not have been your biological father," Ava didn't cry. She just asked one thing. "Does that mean he didn't love me?" Jenna shook her head, her voice breaking. "No. Never. He loved you more than anything. He was your dad in every way that mattered." I added, "Families aren't always about blood, Ava. They're about showing up. Every day. No matter what." Ava looked at both of us, then whispered, "Okay. It should have ended there. The resolution. The understanding." But as Jenna opened the envelope Lauren had mailed, a small photo fell out, one Jenna had never seen before. It was a picture of Ava as a baby, but not in their old house. Not with her late husband. Jenna turned it over. On the back in faded ink were 3 words that stopped us cold. Tell her everything. Jenna stared at the photo like it held every question she'd been too scared to ask. I sat beside her silent as the meaning behind those 3 words. Tell her everything settled over us. It was a message not just from the past, but from someone who must have known the weight of secrets. Someone who hoped even after all that time the truth would finally be told. The photo showed a much younger Jenna, holding Ava as a newborn. But standing next to her wasn't her late husband. It was a man I didn't recognize, tall, dark hair, a gentle smile. He had his hand on Jenna's shoulder, and he was looking at the baby like she was his whole world. Jenna's hand trembled. His name was Mark," she said softly. "We were together briefly. I never told anyone about him. It ended before I even knew I was pregnant. By the time I met Ava's dad, I was already 3 months along. He never asked questions. He just stepped in." I looked at her, surprised by the calm in her voice. Not regret, not fear, just truth. A truth that had been buried, not to deceive but maybe to protect. Maybe to survive. We talked late into the night after Ava went to bed. There were still gaps, still things Jenna couldn't remember clearly. But one thing was certain. Ava's story was more complex than any of us imagined. And it wasn't about finding a new father. It was about making space for the full picture of who she really was. The next day, Jenna sat down with Ava alone. I stayed outside, giving them time. I watched from the porch as Ava sat quietly on the couch, listening as her mom explained. She held the photo in her lap. At one point, she leaned into Jenna, rested her head on her shoulder, and said something I couldn't hear. But I saw Jenna cry, not with pain this time but with release. When they came outside, Ava ran up to me, arms wide, and hugged me tightly. "You're still my stepdad," she said. "And I still smell grown-up when I wear her perfume." I laughed softly, brushing her hair behind her ear. "That's not changing anytime soon." A few weeks later, we added a new picture to the living room wall. One of all 3 of us, Ava in the middle, grinning wide. Next to it, Jenna hung a small frame with a photo of her late husband. And beside that, we placed the baby photo that had started it all. We didn't have all the answers. We probably never would. But we weren't afraid of the questions anymore. Family isn't always about perfect timing or clean stories. It's about honesty, forgiveness, and the courage to keep showing up. Even when the past reappears in old perfume bottles or forgotten photographs. Ava still asks questions sometimes. And we've made a promise to always answer them. Even when it's hard. Because growing up isn't just about wearing perfume or looking older. It's about knowing who you are. Even if it takes time to figure it out.